you wish more young men realized?
What masculinity is. There's been concerted movement on the right to treat masculinity as lifting weights, having sex, and driving awesome cars. You can do all of those things, and I'm not saying any of those things are bad. I think in their proper context, all of those things are quite good, but that is not the core of what masculinity is. You do all those things in service of another thing. Those are what we would call instrumental goods. They're not inherent goods. They're things that are designed for another thing. You lift weights so that you can be strong.
Yeah. Do you think Ben Shapiro listens to us? I feel like we've literally...
I think it's the other way around. I think it's more likely we are listening to things that Ben Shapiro has.
How funny is it, though?
That's the thing, though. Like, the whole idea is you need to understand that it's not just Ben Shapiro telling you the same thing. So if you don't like Ben Shapiro, I shouldn't do this. It's
Mike, you should be on screen.
Mike should not be on screen. Mike, there. Mike's on screen. Okay. So that's I think that's the thing. It's, you hear normal guys saying that this is what masculinity is. It's not just Ben Shapiro. So if you don't like Ben Shapiro, I shouldn't do these things.
Yeah.
Or I don't like whatever that other guy was interviewing, I shouldn't do what he says. It's all right. I think
it goes to like part of our aim with this podcast is to get these diverse people on who have different opinions. I've never met Ben Shapiro. You've probably never met Ben Shapiro. I don't think you have. But I mean, the fact, and look, guys, like him or hate him, Ben is an incredibly bright man. Like he's very quick-witted, and he is not an idiot. So if you're hearing these things from multiple sources, I definitely think that's where we start to see like truth start to come out, right? Like, and I'm not saying just because we say it and because Ben Shapiro says it, it's true. I'm just starting to point out like, hey, this is kind of what we're talking about getting different voices.
Well, and how cool, I think one of the funniest things is we went from one video where it's like, it was everything he just said, right? Like, oh, men do this, and this. It's like, but that's not what masculinity is. Right. The why and the how behind it are important, not just the what you're doing. Right. I mean, I thought it was interesting. We had, I think it was Casey's interview. And we were talking about, if you guys haven't seen Casey Crocker's interview, you should check it out. It's fantastic. But I was listening. I mean, it's a long interview too. But he did such a great job explaining himself. But he was talking about how, like, this idea of like someone who doesn't go to the gym and lift weights isn't less of a man, right? And we've talked about before how we want to be balanced. We do want to have strength, and we do want to have physical strength. But just because you don't have that doesn't mean you're not a man. It means you have another road to go down. You have further to go down when it comes to the road to masculinity, just like someone who hits the weights but doesn't hit the books. Yeah, right? Absolutely. And so I thought it was interesting, though, because like, I was talking to Jamie about this, and I was like, think about someone like, we think of like the warrior cast, right? Men who are warriors and all something. Yeah, okay, that's manly. But at the same time, what about the guys who invented like a cruise missile? What are the guys who like, think about Leonardo da Vinci, like, and what these artists did for, like, I mean, as a Christian, what they did for Christianity, the artwork that they did, and just what an effect that had on the world. Or musicians, stuff like that. And I think about that stuff, and I'm like, that's all still part of masculinity, right? That's all still like, you're not less of a man because of that. And so I think it's interesting that, we went from one video where it's like stereotypical men. This is what men like. Throw a steak on there. To there's so much more to it than that.
Yeah, no, when you talk about Leonardo da Vinci, man, so growing up, I was homeschooled for the first through 6th grade. Yep. And so, part of what I got to do was learn kind of on things that I was interested in. And I will tell you guys, the men that I really admired were guys like Leonardo da Vinci. Why? Not because of like he was this great inventor, but because of all of the amazing talents he had and used. Yes. He was a painter, a philosopher. I mean, he was all these different inventor. Right. And his inventions he had some inventions about war, but he had some practical inventions. He had, he drew up the first flying machine that we have. I mean, he did studies on human anatomy. I mean, this was a guy who was like fully embraced
mind, body, and spirit.
Yes. And like who he was as a man. And so for me, those were the guys that I always admired because, because they were multiple.
Yes. Yep. And that's what I think Ben's saying there is that idea of, again, and I think this is a good thing for us to talk about, because you're getting, like, we have the feminization men on one side, and then we have the ultra, like, I think what he mentioned was kind of like, the machismo, like everybody has to be like super manly and you got to dominate people and be mean. And again, in that first video, they kind of talked about that, like dominating and stuff like that. I'm like, of course I agree with you on that. I don't think that it's
Yep.
You know, that's not a healthy relationship to have with a woman, is where you're just dominating them.
Nope.
That's completely unhealthy. My wife would not put up with that. She would.
Well,
you know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know. I guess to me, it's just, that's why that commercial bothers me so much, is because it's superficial masculinity.
Sure.
It's not true masculinity.
Sure.
When this silent, you'll be alone, far from friends in life. You'll spend your evenings getting stoned